We have breaking news. The U.S. Coast Guard says they found a debris field while searching for the missing submersible. A remote-operated vehicle, or ROV, found the debris near the site of the Titanic wreckage. The Titan's submersible had lost contact with its ship on Sunday. Several additional search and rescue vehicles had been arriving in the area in the last days. Let's bring in CB24's Beatrice Vaiswin with more on this exciting announcement. And we know we should be getting an update from officials within the next few hours.
Yeah, we're going to hear from the Coast Guard later on this afternoon around 3 o'clock, Eden. That's when we're expecting to hear from officials. They'll certainly be looking at this debris. What does it mean? Is it debris from the submersible? That's obviously a big question. It's going to have to undergo testing. That's going to take a few days generally. But we'll hear from the U.S. Coast Guard exactly what does this mean. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, we'll carry that announcement live for our viewers as well. I want to bring in Dr. Michael Guillen today. He is a physicist, but 23 years ago, he was a journalist on a harrowing mission down into the Atlantic to be one of the first journalists to see the wreckage of the Titanic. And he joins us now live. Dr. Guillen, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Beatrice. It's terrible circumstances, but I'm happy to have the chance to talk with you.
I know you're probably just hearing this for the first time, as are we, about the debris that's been found by the U.S. Coast Guard. What was your initial, reaction, your gut feeling when you heard this?
Well, I have two reactions. Number one, this discovery following on the heels of the tapping sound or the noises that reported they've been hearing. I'm just wondering, what does this indicate? The fact is that when the Titanic went down, it went down in two pieces, the bow and the stern, and they're separated by what we call the debris field. This is where a lot of stuff spilled out of the Titanic when it went down. So I need some immediate clarification is when they say they found debris, well, there's all kinds of debris down there. So are they distinguishing between the debris that exists between the bow and the stern of the Titanic, or is this debris outside that field? So that would be the question, Beatrice, that I would have right away. But obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. I would need some clarification then before having any kind of definite reaction.
When you talk about the debris that's at the bottom of the Atlantic, Dr. Guillen, you saw it firsthand. September 15th, 2020, you were on a story going down to see the Titanic when your submersible, a Russian submersible, got swept by a current and you were lodged under a propeller. So you know what this feels like. I'm sure those 30 minutes you were lodged felt like hours, if not days. What are you feeling, and what do you think these 5 souls on board the submersible have been feeling for the last few days?
Well, honestly, Beatrice, it felt like an eternity. When you're down there trapped inside of a tin can 2.5 miles below the surface of the ocean, and it's awfully cold in the 30s, and the pressures are absolutely bone-crushing, they will crush the air out of you in a nanosecond, quicker than in the blink of an eye. You realize that you're in a very hostile environment. Everything is conspiring against you to live. And I can imagine, well, I don't have to imagine, that experience informs me about what they must be feeling. And I'm going to still talk in the present tense because whatever the Coast Guard reports to have found, I want to still believe that there might be, against all odds, that they're still alive. But yes, I saw it firsthand, Beatrice, and I'll never forget in particular that the bow was very emotional for me because we paused for a moment of prayer when we arrived at the bow. And that's when it hit me like a sledgehammer that this is not just the wreck of a ship. This is a graveyard. This is where more than 1,000 people lost their lives, men, women, and children. And in fact, there's even a plaque where the captain stood that commemorates the lives of the children. And then when you go across from the bow to the stern, that's when it really, really, really comes home to you, the degree of the tragedy, because this is where you see all the debris. That's why they call it the debris field. You see suitcases. You see women's shoes. You see vanity cabinets. You see all cases of champagne, all just embedded in the sand, but they're still visible. And that's when I thought, my goodness, this was a tragedy of enormous proportions.
And this is a story that has now gripped the entire globe as we wait to hear from the U.S. Coast Guard. Dr. Guillen, I guess the one hope that the co-founder of the OceanGate expeditions has said is he has confidence that his co-founder knows how to help preserve oxygen. But how do you do that? How do you not panic when you're in this tiny capsule, shoulder to shoulder, no seats for 4 days now?
Yeah, I think that's the $6 million question, Beatrice. It's all easy to say, when you're on the surface and say, oh, yeah, well, they can conserve oxygen. You know what? If you've been down there like I have, it's really hard to stay calm. It is the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. When you're under stress, even if you don't hyperventilate, you're still metabolizing at a much higher rate than normal. And it's not just about the oxygen. What people forget is that you're exhaling carbon dioxide. Now, there was a scrubber in there that's designed to remove carbon dioxide, but if they've had a catastrophic electrical failure, which is almost certainly the case, otherwise we would have heard from them, other things would have happened we don't have time to get into, then that scrubber is not operating. So it's not just a lack of oxygen, it's an excess of carbon dioxide that they're having to struggle with. So I wouldn't trivialize the situation at all. It is a serious situation that they're in.
Extraordinarily serious. Dr. Michael Guillen, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time and helping us understand what these 5 people are going through on board this submersible. Thank you so much.